Yeah, so this was way back in 2004 when I was doing my doctoral degree in human and organization learning from George Washington University. And that was the time, pretty close to that, when for the first time in 2003, the international standard ISO IEC 17024 was published. And so to me, it was a great opportunity to be involved with the standard, specifically because my areas of interest was in terms of competence, psychometrics, how can you help organizations become learning entity. So this seemed like a very, very good fit. This program was just getting started. So that's how I got into ANSI, ANAB accreditation, and more specifically looking at competence, because that seems to be one of the core elements. You can look at qualification, you can look at other ways by which people acquire competence, but how do you know someone really has the competence? So that was an area where I was always fascinated, and it seemed like this was right here in Washington D.C., so I didn't have to move to any other town. So it just made sense to do that. Yes. So I've been here with ANSI ANAB, which is ANSI National Accreditation Board, for 15 plus years now. So it's been a pretty long time. And the reason why I got into this was, uh, it's really important to look in terms of how competence is measured. It's very, very different from a qualification or a training. Someone can go to a training, they may or may not learn, but when you say someone is certified, the certification body is making a claim, and there is evidence to support the claim that the person who is being certified has the competence to practice. Now that's really important. That's very, very difficult to measure someone's competence. You can measure someone's theoretical knowledge, you can put someone through a training, but how do you measure that someone has the competence to practice in the field versus going to a training program, going to an educational program where it's fundamentally different. So it seemed like a place where I could actually help organizations to become the best out there. It's so gratifying to see the impact that ANSI ENAB has made in the past 15 plus years, in terms of organizations that we have accredited, the impact in terms of people who have been certified by accredited organizations. So lots and lots of research studies during the past 15 years by FDA, by OSHA, that really talks about impact of certification that are accredited. So accidents have come down, deaths have come down. So it's really very, very fascinating area, which is different from the traditional degrees and universities and other educational offerings. Yes, so it's actually across the sector, because that's one of the common denominators is in every field, every sector, whether it's construction, whether it's healthcare, whether it's financial advisors, forensic experts. If you look at any field, at the end of the day, you need competent people. Um, if you're looking at medical facilities, you need competent people, right? So that's a common denominator across all sectors. So in terms of users from government agencies like Department of Defense, we work very, very closely with them on a DoD 8140 directive, where DoD uses ANSI ANAB accredited certifications for cyber security. So we work with federal OSHA, which has mandated that all certifications need to be accredited by a national accreditation body. So there are many agencies that, Department of Energy. So that's at the government level where, users of the certification. We also work with consumer groups, interest groups, users of certifications, people that have been certified. Obviously, we do not certify individuals, we accredit organizations. So the stakeholders is across from government agencies, scheme owners to certification bodies, and ultimately industry and employers. That's one area that we also focus on, is employers coming out and saying, hey, we need certified individuals to fill in this position because they have seen the benefits of having someone who is certified by an organization that is accredited. So we are beginning to see more of that employed in, if you look at employment ads, Georgetown University does a really good job in terms of tracking it. So you're seeing more and more employed saying we prefer people with certification. So it provides people an alternate track to get meaningful employment, get good paying jobs. So it's really a good way to skill people, have industry meet the gaps in terms of what they need, and in terms of the jobs that they need to fill. Yeah, absolutely. So getting accredited, it's a very, very rigorous process. It's time consuming because of the effort that is required. So when you look at the ANAB process, uh, the standards are there which guides the requirements. So everything from how a certification body should be structured. Is it independent? Is it impartial? Is the assessment based on a valid job analysis? So, is the assessment psychometrically valid? Is there a proper complaint and appeals policy? Is there a management system? So if you look at the standard, all of these requirements are laid down. Now, in terms of the process, there is an application that needs to be filled out addressing evidence for each of these requirements. So it's not just saying yes, no, we meet, we are impartial, right? Any certification body can say, oh, we are impartial, we are independent. But what's the evidence to show that? So it's a series of legally defensible evidence that a certification body needs to provide. It's a very long document process running into hundreds of pages. It's reviewed by assessors who are contracted by ANAB. They spend on an average 2 to 3 days. It's a team of two assessors who would review it. They would engage with the certification body. It's then followed by an on-site visit to see whether what's on the application is actually being applied. So it's not just a paper review process. There is validation in terms of looking in terms of, for instance, if there is a practical exam, our assessors would go to a practical test site and observe people who are being tested, to look in terms of inter-rater reliabilities, look in terms of settings. And the process can take anywhere 4 months, 6 months to even a year. And many organizations actually spent several years to get accredited, and that just shows you the rigor that goes into it. Last year I was so pleased with an organization that we accredited. So after we accredited, their director of certification emails me and says, Vijay, it's taken us almost 10 years to get accredited, but we were persistent, we wanted this, we thank you for the patience. But it's a very long process in terms of getting accredited, but it's not something which is we are not putting together requirements. It's the cost of doing things right, because again, as I said, it's competence of people, right? So we are looking at the competence of certification body, everything that goes into coming up with a fair, valid, reliable instrument to assess competence. So it's not a trivial thing. It's very important. It's not a rubber stamp process. You send in an application, pay the application fee, and then we say, hey, you're accredited. It's a very rigorous process. We are extremely proud of organizations that have got accredited. They have stuck to it because they know what it takes to get accredited. And that's really important for everyone to recognize that there is a lot that goes behind developing good quality certifications based on national, international standards. There has to be a process to review that. And then The other thing is also, this is not like a one time process. You get accredited and you are done for the rest of your life. Every year the certification body has to go through an annual surveillance where there is a review in terms of what was done in the previous years, how many exams were administered, were all the exams meeting the psychometric requirements, how was the complaints handled, and the accreditation cycle is for 5 years, which means uh, before the end of 5 years, the certification body has to go through a re-accreditation where we have two new assessors. They come and look into it, they review the process, go through everything. And then there is also an accreditation committee consisting of national experts and volunteers who make the accreditation decision. So it's multi-level, multi-layered review process, document review, on-site visits, office visits, witnessing of practical exam, witnessing of test administration, review by professional assessors, review by committee. So it's very stringent process, but that is required at the end of the day to have confidence that the people who are certified have a valid certification and it's defensible. It is something that's not just based on someone making a claim. It's not a certification body saying, oh, we meet the standard. There is evidence to support that claim. Similarly, when a certified individual goes to an employer and says that I have an accredited certification, there is this entire evidence that backs up that claim. So we call it as an independent third party assessment. It's not a self declaration. It's not an individual going and saying, hey, I know what to do. It's the certification body supporting the claim. It's the accreditation body that's supporting the claim. And this whole international apparatus, through a multilateral recognition arrangement that supports that, so that people can move across countries. It's valid, interoperable, and recognized globally. So, in terms of the standard, goes through a revision every 5 years. So, when I started, that was the first edition of the standard in 2003 version. Then 2012 version came in. Currently, we are going through a revision of the 17024 standard. And these revisions by an international group of experts, so 50, 60 experts from all over the world meet, and it's a very long process to go through a revision, but that revision captures the changes that happens in the industry that impact certification. Like for instance, right now, AI is certainly a big thing, which certification bodies are on the fringes. How to use AI? Can it be used for assessment, for exams, for scheme development? So that needs to be captured within the framework of the standard. So the standard would have some additions to reflect that. So that's to reflect the changes in the practice. We're also seeing more certification bodies now aware of the importance of accreditation. We are seeing more uh, countries now adopting the 17024 standard. So when we started about 15 years back, it was just getting started. Now we have a multilateral recognition arrangement internationally in place, and I would say probably there are about 40, 50 countries that are signatories to the multilateral recognition arrangement for 17024, which means that if you're accredited by ANAB in the United States, your accreditation is recognized by other signatories in Australia, in UK, and other parts of the world. It's that kind of thing. And then also the practice is constantly evolving in terms of how to measure things. So, psychometric, newer types of assessments are coming in. For instance, we did not really have remote proctoring 15 years back. So that's relatively a newer type of test administration that's come in place. So a lot of changes happening, both in terms of the standard, The process per se, I would say it's not really changed, but what has changed is, as an accreditation body, we look at various processes that we do. We look in terms of what is it that's working, what is it that's not working. So a lot of things have been streamlined to make it more efficient for the certification bodies to go through the process. Uh, you know, we also now use remote witnessing, on sites. Previously, everything was in person. Now it's a mix of in person as well as remote assessments. So there are lots of changes that's happening, which I think reflects the changes in the industry, changes in the field. So, in terms of the history of ANSI and ANAB, ANSI, interestingly, was the three out of the five, the three founding members were government agencies: the Department of Commerce, Department of War, and Navy. So, ANSI has a very, very strong relationship with government agencies, and I believe there are about 87 agencies that are members of ANSI, work pretty closely with ANSI from EPA. So the whole world of standards, which ANSI does, and the whole world of conformity assessment, which is assessing whether the standards are met or not. So this very nice division between ANSI approving standards as American national standards, working on the standards front with ISO, other standards developing organization, and then the accreditation arm of ANSI, which is the ANSI National Accreditation Board, looking at accreditation. So we work very, very closely with agencies. They come to us. We work with various licensing authorities, more in terms of educating them, in terms of what good quality certifications are, how these agencies can actually leverage and use private sector certifications that are accredited. To give you an example, in the food safety area in the past, every district, every state, every jurisdiction, they would create their own exams, administered them, and then license people based on that. That is not a very efficient process with each jurisdiction. They do not, in many cases, have the expertise to develop good psychometric exams. Um, so, in the food area, the Conference for Food Protection and ANAB came together about, now it's more than 20 years back, to create accredited certification for food safety managers, which means that each state, each jurisdiction would not have to do. They can use these, private sector driven available certifications as a way for making sure that people that they use, so it could be used parallelly with licensing. Similarly, we see with crane operators, where if you have an accredited certification, that then provides a way for people to be licensed. So the agencies, the states don't really have to create a licensure exam, spend money, public money doing that. They can have a process where if someone has a valid certification, they then present that to the licensing authority, go through the process, and then they get licensed. So it's a beautiful system where the private public partnership works hand in hand, which is the strength of the United States. And they can leverage what is done efficiently in private sector, but needs that approval of licensure to practice in the field. So we work closely. ANSI has VP for policy. ANAB has a VP for policy, and we work very, very closely with agencies to educate them, so that when they write regulations, when they write legislations, these are informed. They would be able to use the expertise that we can help them to come up with good legislations, good regulations, which would be in the interest of public protection, public health, and national security in this country. So, in terms of if you look at the standard, what the standard essentially, so we use different standards. So, for certification of persons or personal certification, we use the ISO standard, which is ISO 17024. We also have a program for assessment based certificates, which looks at certificates that has an assessment which measures learning objectives that's based on an American national standard, ASTM 2615. So these standards provides the framework to support good quality certification. And the reason why that's important is, now if you did not have a standard and you went out and said, okay, what are the elements of a good certification? Now everyone would come up with a very different set of requirements. Someone could say, oh, they should be independent. Someone would say, no, independence is not impartial, so they should be impartial. Someone would say they need to have a job analysis. Someone would say maybe job analysis is not required, right? So when you develop a standard, it's the experts in the field who come together. And in this case, if it's an international standard, all over the world, they come together, they deliberate, and they create a standard which they say is the core of what a good quality certification should be. So that then provides a baseline. Okay, this is what is the ideal of a good quality certification. Now, once you have the standard, then you can start assessing compliance to the standard. So, like, for instance, if you look at the, say, as an example, I like to play tennis, and there are standards which talks about the dimensions of a tennis coach, right? So uh, whenever we step into a tennis field, that's given, right? Now imagine you walked into, every time you go to a neighborhood, a different country, and the dimensions were different, the net size was different, the sidelines were different, then how do you even play, right? So there is no base level. So that's what the standard does, whether it's a leadership standard, a culture. So all the standards that you can think of provides the experts coming at a consensus based process and saying, okay, these are the requirements for a quality certification that operates to assess competence of people, and then the compliance becomes a counterpart to that. Yes, I think like one of the things which I'm always excited. It's not one, but it's multiple set of accomplishment, but the um, um, same common response is that the accreditation has made us a much better certification body. um, and we look at, FDA has done a 10-year study on the impact of having an accredited food protection manager, and they say that the instances of violations of food safety has gone down in restaurants where you have a certified food protection manager. OSHA and some of the other agencies have done studies which has said that when you have an accredited crane operator, the accidents and deaths comes down. So to me, that's the most fulfilling part of it, that when you work and you can actually see the impact of what you do in terms of reducing accidents, improving the quality of life, uh, public protection, consumer protection. So all of that is, so it's not just, okay, imagining the potential benefits, or oh, we are doing accreditation so it must be good. It's other entities, it's, and these research, in all these cases, it's not even we are doing the research, it's done by independent agencies. They do the research, they come back, and then they find, oh, this is something which has a very positive impact either in career earnings, whether it's job upper mobility, for the consumers, for the people who are being certified, for the users, for the certification body. So when you see that benefit of what you do, that's very, very gratifying, because this is not really meant to be a checklist. It's not meant to be you submit documentations and we just check it. We don't care about whether it's really making any tangible benefit. But when you actually go back and see, wow, this is something which is making an impact, saving lives, so that's something which is very, very meaningful. So in terms of, I think, as I said, it's really important for licensing authorities, regulators, policy makers to work closely with ANAB, ANSI, ANAB accredited certification bodies, because this is our area of expertise. This is something that we do on a daily basis. So we know what works, how do you really measure competence, what's a good structured certification body, because there are lots of elements like education and training. How do you firewall training from education so that the test is not, you're not teaching to the test. So there are lots of elements that goes into creating a valid certification program. So fundamentally, the most important thing is for licensure authorities, regulators to be aware of the work that we're doing. And ANAB as an organization is always looking to collaborate, work with these entities, essentially because we see this as a partnership, whether it's a partnership with a certification body, partnership with the agency, partnership with a scheme owner. All of that is ways to bring the collective wisdom that all of us have, the collective expertise that all of us have, to have an impact on certification and licensure. And the reason that's important is we don't want to be duplicating what already exists in the private sector. We want to be leveraging the expertise that's there in the private sector, but also operating within the framework that regulators and legislators put together. Right. Yeah, and the beauty of standards, it's everywhere. It's but we don't really actively see them. So if you look at a building, there are so many building codes, plumbing codes, fire protection codes, so many standards that goes in. But we just look at the building, we see, okay, it looks nice, it's standing, but we don't really think and reflect in terms of everything that's gone in to make that building safe, everything that's gone in to secure everything the way in which it should be. So ANSI, in its part, works with, I think right now there are about 270 standards developers like ICC, IEEE, that develop standards, and ANSI approves them. And last when I looked, there were over 11,000 American national standards. So, and then when you look at the work of ANAB, we are the largest multidisciplinary accreditation body in the Northern Hemisphere, with over 2,500 accredited certification bodies, from labs to forensic. So it's, when you go to a medical lab, you want to make sure that lab is accredited. Someone has looked at the results of those, right? We assume that lab, if you look at a test lab result, it says your cholesterol is this much. We don't really stop to look at whether those machines were calibrated, whether those people who were testing were competent to do what they were doing. We just trust, right? We believe that it's there. Now, for that to happen at the public level, there are lots and lots of people who are working behind the scene to make that happen, in terms of having standards, in terms of accrediting those labs. Similarly, with products, we use products from a toaster. We don't really have to worry about, to an extent, the toaster blowing up on our face, in the morning when we are toasting the bread. But that does not happen automatically. It's not okay. So you have product certification bodies that are constantly testing products out there. ANAB as an accreditation body, accrediting the product certification body to make sure that what they are doing, so it's product, process, labs, management system, and people, all of that falls within the ANAB's accreditation portfolio, and then complemented by ANSI standards development part of it. Yeah, I think one of the things I do commend QABA for being accredited, continuing with accreditation, because it takes a lot to be accredited, a lot of resources, top management commitment, leadership needs to be behind. So this process, accreditation is not something which you just task someone and say go and get accredited. It has to be part of the DNA of the organization. So definitely comment QABA for getting accredited. Now, in terms of what we would, or what I would wanted to see is continue to innovate with newer ways of assessments, continue to grow the reach, and the reason I say that is that would help the community as such. As ANAB, what we can vouch for is this is a good certification that has met the standard, has been accredited. So we would want more, people to come forward, use the accredited certification. Uh, not just within the United States, but also in North America, internationally, because the type of work, like, I was reflecting on the work that QABA does in terms of certifying the autism counselors and people that are involved with counseling of these children. That's a very, very important work, and we need more of that. We want to have people who have that certification to be able to do the work for which they have been certified. We don't want people who do not have that level of competence to be working with the kids, because that's not going to be there is this entire science behind what a trained certified counselor needs to know, assessed in a very valid way. So I do hope that QABA continues to grow both within the United States, internationally, and the reason that I say that is because that's going to have an impact on the health, well-being of the kids with some of these conditions. So I really hope that QB is able to leverage the benefits of being accredited, leverage the benefits of multilateral recognition arrangement that ANAB is signatory to. So when you start expanding in other parts of the world, you are able to take that accreditation with you, because this is something which we are seeing with many accredited certification bodies, that they are really expanding. I was talking to one of the certification bodies that is accredited. They said their CEO was telling me they accredited, they administered the 1 millionth exam. Um, and then I was talking to another certification body CEO just last week, and he said they have like 2.6 million active certifications out there. So that is again one of the real nimbleness of a certification program versus a historical degree program. So if you have a degree program, a university program, you are constrained by physical resources in terms of how many people you can put through a degree program. How many universities can say, okay, we have like 2.6 million active people who hold our bachelor's degree, right? So it's provides that opportunity for quick skilling, uh, you know addressing the problem that we have. So I do wish QABA, the best in terms of gaining recognitions, working with more states. And the reason why I see that is being accredited is, proof of the pudding. It's not I'm saying or you are saying that your credential means something. It's this whole process, independent third party accredited certification that speaks for itself. So I do hope that in all of these fronts, uh, QAB, maybe after 5 years when we chat again, hopefully some of these would be accomplished.